Sine and cosine. Praise the Lord we never have to calculate with or count on those. Wait, what? That stuff can also be differentiated? Oh god, no. So let's have a look at the sine of x, and let's try to find the derivative roughly. Remember, the derivative at a certain point tells us the gradient. Jace is going to try it out himself, and drives through a region of the country of Sine to find out how steep it all is. Now, Jace starts driving at the source. At the beginning, the gradient is rather low. Jace can't really see how steep it is at the start. But let's help him out. The gradient is 1, so the derivative at the location of 0 should have the value of 1. Let's draw a 1. If Jace continues to drive onwards, he'll keep climbing and climbing. However, it isn't as steep as it used to be anymore. The gradient is getting smaller and smaller until he reaches the top of the mountain. Here, his car stands horizontally for a bit, so the gradient is 0. Now Jace heads into the valley. The gradient is negative and it gets steeper all the time until he reaches pi. So that's 3.14 something something. Here, Jace notices that everything is as steep as it was in the beginning, but instead of climbing, he's descending, so the gradient is -1 here. From here on, it gets gradually flatter, but he keeps descending, so the derivative stays negative until Jace reaches the bottom of the valley. Here, everything's flat again for a bit. That means the gradient turns 0 again, until he heads up again. Jace is driving up the hill, the gradient is positive again, and it keeps getting steeper until we reach the same gradient we had at the beginning. This is the image we get if Jace draws all the gradients in a chart. Remind you of something? Exactly. It's the cosine. Jace has just drawn the derivative of sine, and suddenly gets a cosine. So just remember, differentiate the sine of x, and you get the cosine of x. So what is the derivative of the cosine? Jace simply drives to neighboring cosine and tries again. At the beginning, he stands on a mountaintop, which is flat, so the gradient is 0 here. Then, he starts his descent into the first valley. It starts off easy, then it gets steeper and steeper, and then it flattens off again, until we're there. In the valley, the gradient comes to 0 again. Then, we ascend again, so positive gradient. First, the gradient keeps increasing, and then it gradually decreases until Jace reaches the next peak. If we draw the derivative, that is the gradient continuously in the chart. It looks like the minus sign. So we make sure to remember this as well. The derivative of cosine is minus sine. Here, the sign is, important, pay attention, minus. Just pay close attention to this when doing our exercises afterwards and in tests, and then you're all set. So, how to continue from here? You probably still know from the last video, we keep signs when differentiating. So minus sign is -1 times sine. If we differentiate, the -1 remains and the derivative of the sine is the cosine. So the derivative of the minus sign is minus cosine. And differentiate again, you probably guessed it, exactly. 78/4 times x to the power of 3. Of course, that's not true. The derivative is -1 times minus sine. So that's the sine of x. And so we come full circle. This is all super important, so make sure to remember it all. By the way, if you guys aren't sure which sign precedes the derivative of the cosine, then just look at the gradient. At the beginning it's 0, then it gets negative. However, the sign starts by climbing, so the derivative should be the minus sign. In general, you can have a look at the thing with the gradient and draw it each time if you've forgotten the circle. So this might not have been much, but it was super important. Therefore, remember it. To figure it out real quick if you happen to forget it again, simply read off the gradient at a few points and draw it. In any case, the derivative of the sine is the cosine. The derivative of the cosine is, pay attention to the sign, minus sine. The derivative of this, logically, minus cosine. And differentiate this again to come full circle as this results in the sine. Nice! Just keep this in mind and you'll win the gold. Get mathing and see you later. Ciao!